The Out of Bounds Show is powered by the award-winning golf courses at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Good morning. Welcome in. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Sound and Communications, soundcomav.com, and their new video wall with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and their new video wall at Ingalls Shipyard in Pascagoula. Soundcomav.com. Audio visual, Sound and Communications. We were talking about the Boston Globe article, bostonglobe.com, Ben Volen. Ben does a great job covering both the New England Patriots and the NFL. We've had him on the show several times. Boy, that article he dropped about Sean Payton and Tom Brady and how, you know, it almost happened a month or so ago, month and a half ago, where they ended up in Miami. Tom Brady as a minority owner and a quarterback maybe for another year or two, and Sean Payton as the head coach. Obviously ties there. Stephen Ross, Michigan alum, the minority owner with the Dolphins, also a friend of Tom Brady's and a Michigan alum. We bring in New Orleans Saints insider Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. Mike D joins us on the Corona Premier Guest Line. Mike, what'd you make of that story on Sean Payton and Tom Brady almost ending up in Miami?
No, it wasn't a surprise to me. I think when you listen to Sean talk, that he needed to kind of turn the page with the Saints. And how all that would have all kind of edged out would have been interesting. But Drew Brees' final season in New Orleans, Drew was contemplating on if he should return or not. And in that time frame, Payton had spoke a couple times to Brady about if Drew doesn't return, to bring Brady to New Orleans. So that's a connection there in that particular deal. So the story didn't surprise me, to be honest with you, and I think it is, despite all the talk of, you know, and he did tell us last week that he would have an announcement on what he would do in 2022 this week, either with Fox or Amazon, that he's going to return back to the sidelines. So it's not a shocking, you know, development anywhere across the board, and you know that there's a lot of things that goes on behind the scenes that general public doesn't know a lot about. And that was just one of them that sort of got out. That it was obvious Brady wanted to leave Tampa, did not want to be with Bruce Arians anymore. He got his way, and Bruce got kicked up to the front office, and you know Tom's now kind of basically in charge of the offense. And almost kind of a quasi-general manager, to be honest with you, the way he has operated the last few years in Tampa and helping recruit talent there. So for him to go to Miami wasn't a big surprise, but, man, with all these revelations now about Stephen Ross and how he handled things as the owner, and, you know, accusations that he wanted to tank games and would have paid a coach to tank games, that's not going to go over well all across the board in the NFL. So all got pushed aside once things got not quite what Mr. Ross would have wanted to be getting done in Miami.
There was an NFL executive, Mike, that was quoted that said he still believed that this marriage could happen in 2023 with Tom Brady and Sean Payton. Obviously, Brady will not be under contract if he doesn't get extended in the summer, that this could happen in 2023. Your thoughts?
Brady to Miami would not surprise me. because it's really an international city, and it would certainly give Giselle an opportunity, much more so they say than in Tampa, to enhance, what she's been involved in the modeling industry, not just for herself but also for others. Opened that up tremendously, and Brady becomes a mercenary, so to speak. Okay, I'll go to Tampa and win there. I'll go to Miami and win there. With Sean, it would put him in a bigger spotlight. The Dolphins have done everything to give McDaniel an opportunity to win in Miami, but he better win, and it better be quick, because I think Ross won't have a lot of patience. But that back part of the story is still there, in how the NFL will handle this with Stephen Ross, and how Ross and the NFL handle this with Brian Flores and his lawsuit, because that is something the NFL has really frowned upon, that you put a bad light on this. And if you were actually asking a coach to throw a game, now you are dealing with a situation with touching the money of the gambling industry, which has now got heavily involved in the NFL, heavily involved, and that normally doesn't turn out well for the owner if you start messing with that. So I certainly think it would be a possibility. Brady to Miami would not surprise me one bit. And Sean, who I think is looking to get maybe to go somewhere else, it would certainly put him in the spotlight in a city like Miami, which has not had that type of glare on it. You would have to go back to when Jimmy Johnson took that job in Miami.
Right.
When he left, when he was fired in Dallas and then took a little hiatus, and then he came back and was coaching in Miami. So it certainly would make what I think we've talked about now for weeks even more prevalent, in that look at the showcase of talent that has been shoved to the AFC. And in this case, if that would happen, it would be not only a top-tier coach that was once in the NFC into the AFC, but arguably the greatest of all time at quarterback, going from the NFC to the AFC.
Mike Detillier on the Corona Premier Guest Line, NFL Insider, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. Wow, how bad was it between Brady and Arians for Tom to call it the way he did and fly over to England and talk to the Glazer family and get the thing done and basically say, it's me or Bruce?
Well, you'd have to know Bruce, and he can be the biggest pain in the Yakta Bay that you would ever want to be around. I think he's a really good guy. He coached here with the Saints, and I've known people that have coached with him and that he has coached. And they all kind of have the same sort of tone about him, that he has got a bristly side to him, but that he's a really good guy at heart. He really is. And but that sometimes you'd want to strangle him. And he has made some comments about Brady that is puzzling to me, that he didn't have to do. About, this wasn't all about Brady. This was more about the team. And come on, you got to be careful in that. But Bruce isn't careful about anything he does. I mean, anything he says and how he says it. I think after he says it, then he starts to think it over. So you'd have to know the personality of Bruce. And had this conversation his final year when he was the tight ends coach with the Saints. and Jim Moore got fired, and Rick Venturi became the head coach, interim head coach with the Saints. And we had a conversation with Bruce and talking to him. He was, I just hope Mr. Benson makes the right decision here when you understand that maybe it had come to its course with Jim, but that he really respected Moore tremendously as a coach. But he felt maybe it had just come to the end of the road, like it does for every coach. And his deal was, I hope he goes out and get an offensive coach because the game is swinging in that direction. And he talked about little personnel moves that he thought that the Saints needed to make back then. And what had happened, it ended up being a decision Tom Benson made that he selected Mike Ditka over Lou Holtz. Now, neither one, we knew Ditka didn't make it, and Holtz wouldn't have made it either.
No.
So, some of the things that Bruce said, he said in a manner, and this is just a conversation between the two of us, and I get it, and he was absolutely right about what was wrong with the organization. But, man, he's over the top sometimes. And sometimes, some people can take that
right
a certain way, and some people can't. They're not good with criticism. And the one thing this shows is that if you get in the way of Tom Brady's success, you paying the price.
No question.
And I think Bruce.
And Bruce has never
Brady
been a grinder like Sean or all these so many of these other guys, right?
He's not. Now, listen, he's got a real fertile mind.
Sure.
About offensive football. He really does. And, man, it's right off the cuff. And he's had some health issues. And sometimes you wonder about if playing golf or sometime even having a little cocktail isn't priority, if it gets late in the day for Bruce. But, man, he gets it at another level of being able to be a play caller. He's very good at it. And I've had people that he's coached tell me how good he is, but that he has a tendency to, once a game plan is set, to try to go in late and try to tweak things a little bit. And that, I think, is a big part of why things didn't work with Brady. That, Tom wanted to run things a certain way. And then Bruce decides, maybe what you and Leftwich came up with, I think it should be done this way. Now, when you're the head coach, you have that type power to do it. But I can see why or how there was some bristling moments with him and Tom, and also just listening to some of the comments Bruce has made. And again, we go back quite a number of years. I get it. I get it. How that would maybe upset Brady, and he feels no question about it that Bruce was a hindrance.
All right, let's switch gears. Mike Detillier, NFL insider, LSU insider, on the Corona Premier guest line. We heard, I think, in January that LSU had like 39 scholarship players. How does that look right now, Mike? What have you been told as far as how many scholarship players do they have on the team today, and how many are they expecting this summer once high school guys and maybe some transfer portal guys show up?
They're not going to be full limit, but Brian has made the comment that he feels pretty good about the depth they've been able to build up throughout that time frame. So I don't think numbers is going to be an issue. You may be a little bit shorter than what you've been the last few years, but Ed had a lot of attrition also. So That always has come into play, but I think you're going to see that across college football, that you're going to have some numbers issues. I had the conversation with Jimbo Fisher last May, and he made the comment that there'll be no team with a full limit. That you constantly, that roster is going to have some ebb and flow in it. And his biggest fear was, as a college football coach, you lose people at a certain position, and you could be short for a long period of time. And so I think what Brian's done, he's done a pretty good job. He's beefed up the offensive line, which didn't have the numbers. The quarterback situation, going out and get Jaden Daniels from Arizona State. The secondary was kind of short-sheeted also from attrition, leaving early for the NFL draft, and he went out and got 5, transfers. So I think overall the numbers won't be the issue. How quickly it can come together, I think, is the big question mark, and more so on offense than on defense, because defensively they got a lot of talent, especially up front, that defensive line. If they have any depth issues, it may be a little bit more in the secondary than anything else. But they got a lot of talent up front along that defensive line. Offensive line is still work to be done, and actually Will Campbell, a true freshman, midterm guy, is running with the first team at left tackle.
Wow.
So that sort of tells you a couple things. One, that Campbell is what he's advertised to be, and he's one of the best high school offensive line prospects I've seen in quite some time in Louisiana. It's not noted for having great offensive linemen. From a number standpoint, he's really good. Also tells you that LSU's question marks on the edges. I think center guard will be okay. The tackle position is the areas that I had question marks about. They're short at tight end, no question about it. They don't have the numbers. But if you're talking about offensive line and tight end, isn't that the wheelhouse of Brian Kelly? No matter where he's been, those two areas have been where he's developed it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on the offensive side of the football for LSU. Because defensively, Bo, he didn't get a bare cupboard. He got some talent he walked into there. I don't know that he would actually kind of come out and say it, but I think he realizes it. Wow, they got some talent here. And a couple of budding young stars along that defensive line. One in particular, Mason Smith, who was a true freshman last year, was a freshman All-American. And, man, he's been a monster player for him. So
who's going to be the quarterback? You mentioned so Miles Brennan decided to come back, and Kelly landed the Arizona State transfer who you just referenced. And then there's another guy there, I think. Who do you expect to be the starting quarterback Labor Day weekend?
I never believed all this talk. Some people were spouting off that Max Johnson was the overwhelming favorite over Miles Brennan last summer on different outlets. I do know who I talked to, and that's not what he told me. I'll put it to you that way, that I really believe had Miles stayed healthy, he would have been the starter over Max Johnson. So somebody was out there kind of decking the cards a little bit with Max Johnson. I think this is a real big-time battle between Miles Brennan and Jaden Daniels. And so far, Miles has got a slight advantage. But I think in the end, it may well be Jaden because of his running skills. LSU has not had a running quarterback as good as Daniels. You look last year, Daniels rushed for over 700 yards. Tell me the last LSU quarterback to run for 700 yards. You couldn't because it never happened. With a rebuilt offensive line, and I really think that this is a big-time battle now. Garrett Nussmeier is still there. He's a little different than the other two guys. He doesn't quite like how I say this, but he is a gunslinger. I mean, that ball's coming out sort of funky in a lot of different ways. It's not clean over the top. It's sideways, three-quarters, you name it. But, man, he thinks he can put a ball anywhere out on the field. And he's a tough guy, a real good leader, and a guy that can make some plays with his feet, too. But he's 6 foot tall. He's not a real tall quarterback, and which was unusual for LSU, because normally they've had the big, tall, linear quarterback. And then there's the true freshman in Howard, who I think is going to be the guy one day. I don't know about 2022, but 2023, he's going to be the guy. And he comes out in sort of at the same time frame along with Arch Manning, and it's unusual for Louisiana to have those type prospects at quarterback over the last few years. Now, I think you're going to see that more and more, but, man, to have those two guys come out sort of in a back-to-back situation is really good. And, well, this one's good for LSU. I mean, Arch Manning ain't going to LSU. I mean, that one you can bank on.
All right, I want to know, 30 seconds. Are you ready to call where you think he goes? Bama, Georgia, maybe somewhere else?
My feeling is that if there was a favorite today, it would be the lean toward Alabama. One thing, man, you get into a battle, Saban and Alabama, not a lot of teams win that.
No.
I'm going to be honest.
No.
You know, Nick is as good a closer as I've seen in the game today. Now, Georgia's been there almost from day one. Clemson and Georgia were almost day one along with Texas. But I think Nick has really muscled in there, and it is a major battle between Alabama and Georgia for Arch.
We'll leave it there. Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He joined us on the Corona Premier guest line. Thanks, Mike D.
Appreciate it, buddy.
All right, Mike Detillier. That was great. And we're still a couple of weeks away from the NFL draft. And, you know, we know we're going to have two guys picked in the – we feel very, very confident that we'll have two guys picked in the NFL draft in Charles Cross and Matt Corral. Blake and I will be heading there 2 weeks from Thursday. Looking forward to that. I haven't been to an NFL draft, and I haven't been to Las Vegas Raiders Stadium. So, is it Allegiant? Yeah. Because I called it the wrong name last week. I think I called it Reliant, and that's Houston. That's similar to me. Show is brought to you by Sound and Communication, soundcomav.com, and the new video wall they just designed and installed at Ingalls Shipyard in Pascagoula, soundcomav.com. Sound and Communications. Hour number 3 coming up.